What's up, everybody? It is Monday, and it is that first day to be crushing it, to be kicking things off, to be taking things down, to be going after those goals. So Monday is that reset day, man. If you got off track, if last week was just a train wreck, guess what? That's okay, because Monday is the day that we take that breath and we get back on track. We get back on track with our goals. It's that day we pull out that compass and we go, what's my destination again? Am I on course? And if I am off course, then that's why we have those compasses. Then we say, I am off course. Well, let me get back on course. Let me get back on track. Let me figure out where that next waypoint is. And then we start moving after it. So, so many people are like, oh, they hate Mondays, but I want Monday to be your friend. I want Monday to be the day that you know that no matter what goes wrong, you always can get back on course. Because that's what life's about, man. Life's about getting to our destinations. If you don't have a course and a destination, you'll never get there. And there's a lot of people that get to the end of their lives, unfortunately, and they're like, what happened? I never got where I wanted to go. Well, that's because they never identified a goal. They never identified a destination. They just kind of meander through life, and it's no different in navigation. You have to be the point man for your own life. You have to set that destination. You got to set that course, and you have to constantly make sure we're on course. That's why I love Mondays. Monday's the perfect day to do it. Start of the week, get on course. We make progress throughout the week. Most of us, you're putting in a heavy week, you're grinding, you get a little tired by the end of the week, reset on the weekend, and then we hit the ground running on Monday again. So, what is this Monday about? So this Monday is, I saw a story yesterday, and I was going to do something different, but I really like this story on the news. And I don't watch much in the news lately. I feel like the news is so driven by its own agenda that almost every story on there is tilted in one way or another. But I will tell you that oftentimes Sundays is me and the long-haired Admiral's day to relax. So oftentimes I like watching CBS This Morning, and I don't feel like very often that information is tilted. For the most part, CBS This Morning on Sundays, or CBS Sunday Morning, I think it is, they have feel-good stories, and it is interesting things most of the time. So they had a story on there about a orthopedic surgeon who had, was at the end of his career, and he had lost his wife unexpectedly, relatively young, and was just incredibly distraught and had lost his way. And a friend of his, basically he was on the X. So he was on the X, and a friend of his reached out and said, hey man, you've got to get off the X. You are stuck on the X, and basically you've got to find a new path. Your wife would not have wanted you to just lay down and die on the X. She would not have wanted that for you. So he started thinking about, what did he do? What does he do with his life? And he loved pets. He loved dogs. He loved dogs, and he also had his pilot's license. So one day he bumps into somebody who was talking about all the dogs at the shelter that are going to be euthanized because they have a massive population of dogs there, and not all the demand for people to home these dogs. And he started thinking about this, and he was like, man, what a sad case. I mean, he would adopt all these dogs if he could, but obviously he can't. He was a smart guy. He was a realist. But he started thinking about, how do we attack this problem? There's got to be a solution. And he thought, how can I contribute to this problem? And he thought to himself, well, I got time on my hands. I'm a retired doctor. I have a plane. And he started doing some research, and he figured out that there are other places in the country, dog shelters, who have lower population with a high demand for people that are looking for dogs, so they'd never euthanize. And then, of course, in his area, they had a high population, and they were euthanizing. So he's like, what if we could move dogs from high population shelters to low population shelters with high demands, and we reduce, we meet the need of everybody that wants a dog, because dogs are amazing. Right, Karma? Yes. And two, he said, we reduced the impact of dogs having to be put down. So he started doing that. He started, going to high population shelters and carrying dogs on his plane to low population areas and basically redistributing so that these dogs weren't being put down. So I love the story. It was a feel-good story. But the bigger thing I started thinking about was he did something that most people don't do. And it's something I want to encourage all of you to do. And that is, most people in life think within the context of what they know. So when we face a problem, typically we address that problem only within the narrow view of our own beliefs, only within our own expectations, only within our own knowledge base. And this is why it's critical to push that mental leadership. This is why we need to read. This is why we need to constantly challenge our beliefs. This is why we should be always seeking out mentors and other people who are at a higher level than us, because we learn from them. And this is where we get into something called thinking bigger. We all got to be able to think bigger. And so many people aren't willing to do that. We think within the narrow scope of what we know. And that doctor, that's exactly what he did. He thought bigger. I mean, for most of us, when we see a problem, we just accept, well, here is the scope of the problem, and it's always been this way, so it's just a problem, and it's just going to stay that way. But oftentimes, when we are willing to take a step back and we are willing to think bigger, there's a solution. And maybe we, like he found out, can play a part. We can provide value to that solution. So I'll give you another example. So back during the Gulf War, Iraq had invaded Kuwait, and this was the first Gulf War back in '92. And Iraq had invaded Kuwait, and of course Kuwait was an ally, and we said, you gotta, obviously we gotta go support our ally, the Kuwaitis. There were atrocities that were happening, so the U.S. military force ramped up. And we were planning our attack. We were planning our invasion. And it was a ground invasion coming into Kuwait. And we also were going to push into Iraq, of course. So we had multiple fronts of this battle that were going to occur. But the majority of it, well, all of it at that time was ground-based. And as they were getting ready to launch the invasion, only a few days away, they were watching that Iraq's most premier military force, the Republican Guard, was positioned all around Baghdad. And we knew we were going to run into some pretty heavy resistance against multiple battalions of the Republican Guard around Baghdad. And the U.S. military said, man, if only we could do something, create a diversion to get those guys away. So there were all kinds of talks of what they could do. Well, one of the talks was, maybe we should send a force to Basra, which is in the port of Iraq, and we can create a diversion, basically create this idea that we're going to do an amphibious attack. And there was this idea of sending, a bunch of ships and a bunch of Marines and all this stuff to create this false image of an amphibious invasion. And instead, somebody thought bigger, and they said, you know what, I've got an idea. Let's send one small group of SEALs. They sent one SEAL platoon and some of our special boat units. So a couple of special boat units, one group of SEALs, and they swam in the middle of the night, and they basically put a whole bunch of explosives on the beach in the darkness, and then they swam back out, and then they set all those explosives off, and then they took their boats and went up and down the shoreline a few times, just shooting onto the beach, and then they got out of there. So the risk was low, and they made it appear like, oh my God, the Americans are preparing for an amphibious assault, and it worked. The Iraqis pushed an entire battalion of Republican Guard soldiers down to Basra to protect the shoreline because they thought there was going to be an amphibious assault. So, boom, thinking bigger. This all comes back to mental leadership, guys. It all comes back to how do we challenge our beliefs? How do we increase our knowledge base? how do we seek out those people who are maybe a little bit smarter or maybe more experienced than we are? Because life, it's just about experiences. Whether you read it or whether you experience it yourself, it gives you additional wisdom. It gives you a bigger encyclopedia of knowledge to draw from to bring to bear on problems. So on this Monday, if you are facing a problem, if you're like, I don't know what to do, or maybe you're just accepting, yeah, this is just a problem and it's always going to be that way, I challenge you to think bigger. You know, it's not a guarantee that you're going to find the solution, but maybe you've got a friend, maybe there's a book, maybe there's something. If you can take a step back, there may be a different approach, an approach that you normally never would have thought of. Nobody else in the time being, maybe they wouldn't have thought of it, kind of like what that doctor did with his organization. By the way, his organization is called Dog is My Co-Pilot, if you want to check that out. So definitely a very cool group, and they have moved thousands and thousands and thousands of dogs. But I love the story because he thought bigger, and that's what it's about. In this life, if we can think bigger, we can probably come up with almost any solution, and you can do it in your life. In order to do that, though, it takes mental leadership, and it takes patience, and it takes our ability to clear out the noise, to be able to think through a problem beyond how we normally would. And it also enables our ability to not accept a problem just is what it is. So guys, that is Monday Muster. This week I want to challenge you to think bigger with the different problems you have in your life, with your family, with your fitness, with your professional life. There are problems. We all are going to have them. It's an inherent part of being human. But when it comes along, think bigger, man. Think outside the box. Yes, that's what Patrick's talking about. So tradition or best practices, the status quo, Patrick, also just means you're doing what everyone else does. Absolutely, man. And the disruptors in this world are the people that challenge that status quo. They think outside the box. They think bigger. And you have the ability. You know, it's not some magic. It's not some magical power. It's just, you know, experiences, time, and a little patience and perspective that gets us to that point. So, all right, guys, that is Monday Muster. I want you guys to get out there. I want you to think bigger. I want you to stay on course. I want you to stay off that X and pass along the positivity. We need it. We need it. And there are problems. We all got problems. So when we think bigger, we can tackle them in different ways and get past them. So that's Monday Muster. Go crush it. I'm out.